This is IAQ Radio, Indoor Air Quality Radio, the voice of the indoor air quality industry, with your hosts, Radio Joe Hughes and the Z-Man, Cliff Zlotnick. And now, Radio Joe Hughes.
Good day and welcome to IAQ Radio Plus. It's episode 716, and this week we welcome Paul Donald, CEO of Encircle Inc. Today we're going to talk about the state of software integration and best practices for estimating and documentation in the property restoration and insurance damage repair industry. Before we get started, let's thank our sponsors. They're the reason we can continue doing the show. And don't forget about afterthoughts.iaqradio.com, sponsored by First On Site, for continuing discussion after the show. IAQ Radio Plus marquee sponsor is First On Site Property Restoration at firstonsite.com. IAQ Radio Association sponsors are ACGIH, the American Conference of Governmental Industrial Hygienists, at acgih.org. AIHA, the American Industrial Hygiene Association, at aiha.org. IICRC, the Institute for Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification, at iicrc.org. The Restoration Industry Association, RIA, at restorationindustry.org. The Environmental Information Association, EIA, at eia-usa.org. IAQ Radio industry sponsors are Particles Plus at particlesplus.com, TSI Inc. at tsi.com, Tramex Meters at tramexmeters.com, and Healthy Indoors Magazine at healthyindoors.com.
And now you can win a cool prize. It's time for the IAQ Radio Trivia question. Be the first to correctly answer. Simply email your answer to czlotnick at cs.com. Or if listening live, just text your answer from your computer. And now, here's the Z-Man.
Hello, everybody. Congratulations go out to John Corliss, Peer Consultants in Washington, D.C., who was first to identify November 10, 1775 as the date the United States Marine Corps was founded in Tunn's Tavern in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here's today's IAQ Radio Trivia question. Name the author of a 1950 paper who discussed how to build intelligent machines and how to test their intelligence. Back to you, Joe.
Okay, so today we have Paul Donald. He's the CEO and co-founder of Encircle Inc. He's got over 25 years of experience as an entrepreneur and technology executive. He co-founded the Encircle app, created a new standard that defines how property loss information is gathered, assessed, and reported when disaster strikes. Welcome, Paul. Great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. This is a real privilege.
We've heard a lot about this Encircle, which seems to be very popular today in the restoration world. What is the app, first of all, and why was it developed?
Well, first of all, I hope it becomes even more popular. I'm never satisfied, so thank you for the compliment. It was developed, so if I go back, I've been in technology for actually over 30 years, but I don't like to say that. I'll keep 25. I feel too old. But I was at BlackBerry for a decade. After that, worked on some technology that Google came and acquired. And really, it's about capturing information, making information easily accessible and instantly digestible for decision making. Back at BlackBerry, we used to say you could be on the golf course emailing and nobody would know about it, but you could answer everybody's questions and feel fulfilled at the end of the day. Go into this space, and I love the restoration and indoor air quality sector because it's really actually quite complex. People oversimplify this industry, and yet there's a ton of building sciences, as both you, Cliff, and Joe know, and you have to apply that as you're doing the job. So how do you not only apply the sciences, but then how do you prove it through documentation? And that was the genesis of Encircle.
Cliff, let me turn it over to you.
Yeah, how did we get onto your radar, Paul? I mean, how did you find us? Did you have a loss in your house or know somebody in the business or what?
Great question. When I was at BlackBerry, a friend of mine was building policy management and claim management systems for the insurance industry. And of course, at BlackBerry, the insurance industry was a big buyer of our products. So I got an introduction into the industry and really learned that they're just financial institutions managing risk. That there's all of these service providers that they rely upon to fulfill obligations. And yet those service providers needed to provide what I considered a ridiculous amount of documentation in order to get paid and fulfill their obligations to the insurance company. So here's a complex ecosystem that really needed technology to bring everybody on a level playing field in terms of understanding and compliance.
Paul, I looked at some demo kind of things, and I saw that you can do like a diagram of a building pretty easily using Encircle. Was that the first development that you put together, and what else have you done since then?
Well, let me take you back to the beginning in 2012. When we're looking at this complex industry, the question was, where do you start? There's problems at the policyholder. There's problems at the restoration contractor. There's problems at the adjuster level, the indoor air quality assessors. It was across the industry. It was so fragmented, and they're all talking past each other. So when you create this platform, it's like, well, who's going to be my first user? Because you need a first user. And what we did is we went out and we created a field documentation platform for policyholders to document contents in a structure when they had a claim or even pre-loss. And really that was just a test. Could we make it easy enough to use for a homeowner who's not getting paid to do it, who probably doesn't like it, and they're not administrative nature? If we can make it a great experience, that was our initial test bed. Then it was, well, where's the next industry that would adopt it? And we tested across, the restoration contractors, adjusters, independent adjusters, reviewers, and it turned out to be restoration contractors really had the need and started that adoption curve.
Cliff?
Yeah, what sort of equipment do people need to operate the app and share the app through their company and share it with insurance carriers and adjusters and TPAs or whoever else they have to share it with?
Great question. So number one, we're mobile first. And the reason being is that our belief was the smartphone is what everybody has in their pocket. Every single one of us has. And at BlackBerry, that was our goal. But once we went and we were creating Encircle, it was, this is going to progress faster than any other piece of technology that we all have access to. And if you look at the cameras and what they're capable of, it wasn't worth moving into third-party pieces of equipment. They're certainly valuable, and we want to tie into it through APIs. But the whole idea around Encircle was everything could be done and captured using a smartphone, and then anybody could review it using a smartphone, a tablet, or a computer. And we had to keep it simple so that we're no what we call foot guns, where I get into a situation and, it can't be used.
Well, okay, so let me try and, I'm not a user, so I need to kind of get a ground perspective on this. And I had a little construction company too. And one of the things that I thought was interesting was that, you could get these floor plans developed. And is that just off of photos, or do I have to do a video and or a photo to get the floor plan developed?
Yeah, so photos and videos are a core tenet within our app, and easily leverageable through any smartphone. So for the floor plan, it's literally a hit the floor plan button within a job, and it opens up your camera to a video session, and then you just walk the perimeter in and out of each room, just at a normal pace, keeping your phone at a 45-degree angle. You don't even have to look at the screen. In fact, what people say is I can be talking with the policyholder as we walk through the property, and it's capturing all of the dimensions. What people don't realize is that your camera on your phone is capturing an 11-foot span. And so that's higher than most walls and wider than a lot of rooms in a house. And so you don't have to walk close to the walls. if you're within 5 or 11 feet and you're walking around, even if there's debris or contents in front of it, it's still going to capture a part of the wall and part of the floor because of that aperture. And that's what makes it fast. The average house is 3 minutes to scan.
And then just real quick, going back to the contents part, was it the same thing? The owner would go through the home and then just take photos or video of their contents, and the app would then develop a list of the contents?
Yeah, in fact, we made it even easier when we started out, and this is still the case within our app because restoration contractors use Encircle for documenting contents. But it was, if you take room photos left to right around the room, which is pretty standard, from the photos, either on mobile or on your computer, you could just tap the contents out. So literally just tap the touch screen and the contents would segment it out. Now, you'd have to add details to each one. You could use voice to text, which every phone supports, or you could add it in by typing it in. And of course, AI is helping that model progress way, quite ahead from what we used to do. But the idea was, it takes a couple seconds to take pictures of the room and a couple seconds to tap out all the contents. And if you want to add the details later, you can, because we both know that when you have an inclement environment that may smell, there may be conditions that you don't want to stay in there and type on your phone. So we allow you the flexibility to move in and out.
Okay, Cliff?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out like what the age barrier is for this. I mean, this kind of blows my mind. I've been in the restoration industry since the early 1970s, and that was before cell phones. And I used to carry around this big portable phone that had a battery, and
I remember those.
and so on and so forth. So to me, it's just like mind-boggling. Is there some sort of age barrier where people underneath this age get it and people my age don't? Or
early on we definitely had that, but what we did was we really focused on those individuals that felt that they couldn't learn it because of age. Mm-hmm. And the benefits to them were so great that they really latched on, and they tended to be the front runners on using the technology. And then the younger ones came on because they had the experience, right? They had the knowledge of how do I mitigate this loss? And then being able to convert that knowledge, especially voice to text. Once we showed the older ones how to use voice to text to really detail, to bring their knowledge in their head to the actual text in the report was just a brilliant experience for them.
If I could follow up, one of the things that I guess always happens is at some point Murphy's Law, comes into effect. Canada, you guys have small population compared to the size of the geography, that's there. And it would seem to me that, some places where stores are going to go out, there may be inclement weather, there may be mountains, the loss may be in a valley, there may not be cell towers and so on and so forth. So I guess Murphy's Law can come into play. How do you know that you've kind of captured everything, and then how do you kind of prevent it from crashing and you lose everything and you're not on site so that you can kind of put it back in?
That's a great question, and it's a really tough problem to solve in a dynamic environment where you may have 3 people working on the site, working in the same job in Encircle, documenting contents or documenting. So the things that we document are cause of loss, resulting damages, work that needs to be done, contents that needs to be restored, contents that needs to be disposed of. And so the platform has to work offline. So everybody has to be able to still do their job. And then when you have a network connection, everything just syncs and magically merges based on timestamps, who captured the information in what area of the structure. So the way we split up the structure is you've got buildings, a building or multiple structures. Inside structures, you have rooms. Inside rooms, you have either cause of loss, resulting damages, work that needs to be done, contents that needs to be packed out. So we design the architecture to match the building, which gives us a leg up on then when you're offline, how do you merge everything back?
Paul, I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about the hydro program and what that does for those that aren't, in the restoration industry. I'm sure a lot of restoration people are more familiar with it, but how do you work on, documenting like moisture mapping type thing? Is that something that the app does?
Yeah, absolutely. And what we wanted to, the design goal behind it, and by the way, this is the most costly, difficult part of the Encircle platform that we had to build. Anybody who is not knowledgeable about this industry, water damage restoration and mitigation is not easy to document. So, obviously we've got the S500. We had to be S500 compliant. We had to be able to work with any skill level. So you're almost educating in the workflow. And then, of course, bringing in your moisture map. Now with our Encircle floor plan, you can just bring in the actual floor plan, but we give the ability to tap it out on a floor plan screen, which with a grid like you would with a pen and paper, or pull in the document. And then, of course, you can start applying equipment. But before you apply equipment, you want to calculate how much equipment I need based on the S500. So all of that is built right into Encircle Hydro with a really nice workflow.
So let me try and figure. So if I've got a moisture meter and I'm trying to figure out, okay, the extent of the moisture damage, how do you like take those measurements from my meter and get them onto the app?
Yeah, right now they can take a picture of the meter or they can physically type it in to the app. So you're basically marking a moisture point. You're choosing what type of material or multiple pieces of materials that I'm measuring at this moisture point, or maybe you're doing a reading on a piece of equipment. You're selecting that and then adding the reading, which you can add through taking a photo or physically entering it. Long term, we're looking at Bluetooth and we're looking at remote monitoring. These are both key capabilities, but before you move there, our belief was you had to build a platform that anybody can use under any circumstance, even when they're Bluetooth, they can't get their phone connected to their Bluetooth meter, the remote monitoring isn't working. You still need the basic skills of being able to enter the data, and it has to be easy.
Cliff?
If I could follow up, one of my concerns is it really isn't with your program. It's really with S500, and one of the things about S500 is it kind of is dictatorial in terms of not giving the restorer a lot of flexibility or options. There's one way, and it's kind of what's outlined in the S500. So how can I deviate from that, if I'm using it? Let's say that I have a client that has special needs. Let's say that I have a situation where I really need to deviate from S500. And although S500 says you can deviate, I'm not necessarily sure that it's easy. So, if we could chat about that a little bit, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have complete flexibility of how you want to manage your job and document it in Encircle. And what we recommend is that you're using the notes function on each reading or on each piece of equipment that describes why. I talk to contractors and adjusters about the nuances, all of the various nuances that can impact how a restorer actually performs the job. And if you explain that up front, and that's why I'm a big fan of video narrations, and we can talk about that after, but you need to explain why you're taking these actions, because a lot of people will just say, well, based on the S500 or based on the last job that I adjusted, this is what you should have done. Well, no, here are all the other circumstances that need to be applied to understand why we took this approach. If that makes sense, Cliff, because we give them the flexibility to do the job right.
No, it makes total sense, and that's I think it's perfect in terms of what you're doing, because I think a lot of times, if they're putting it into Xactimate, you only have so many words and so many lines and so many codes and so on and so forth. And when they could, I looked at the on your website, I'm sorry, it wasn't on the website. You sent us a situation that dealt with a fire project and had someone kind of walking through it. Then on your website, you had another example, which I believe was a water loss. And yeah, I could see where having the ability to talk it out and explain, this is really important and why and what we need to do and why we need to deviate. But yeah, good.
From the very beginning, we supported photos, videos, notes, and sketch, and then photos for contents. But the video part, the explanation in the video the narration is just so critical because it explains why we did the job the way we did. And when there's a reviewer or an adjuster, it's actually proven they're getting to yes faster and less back and forth. It's like, oh, well, that makes sense based on now the photos that I'm seeing. And then, of course, your moisture report. Okay, go ahead, check. Without that explanation, if you just have even a 3D walkthrough or just photos, there's so many assumptions that need to be made. Like, just think about how many assumptions if all you're looking at is a static, walkthrough or video versus, you can't smell, you can't experience, you can't see what's on my truck, or all of the things that come into play of how I'm going to mitigate this loss. But if you can explain it, much better.
No, absolutely, Joe.
I'm curious about one of the potential glitches that could come up. Restoration projects are oftentimes very loud. You've got dehumidifiers running, you've got these blowers going, you got, people in there doing work, pulling stuff up. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, if I'm out there and I'm shooting a video of that and I'm narrating to the video, does that cause you problems?
So if you look at the Bluetooth headsets now, they have amazing noise cancellation.
Okay.
And most people have Bluetooth headsets for their phone. If you're going to shoot the video, that's what I highly recommend, is that you're using a Bluetooth headset with noise cancellation.
Okay, that would seem important. All right, so we can do the inventory, we can do the mapping, we can then follow the project along. What else? What other capabilities does the app have that we have not talked about yet?
Yeah, the flexibility on both reporting and your forms. So all of your legal documents. The whole idea was that it's an all-in-one platform for the field teams to collect information, ensure that legal documents are signed, and that all of the reports are generated, and that the content has referenceable data that proves its integrity. So timestamps, who captured the information, and geolocates where the information was captured. All of that is important because with the insurance company, again, they're the largest buyers of contextualized data. They just review data. They're not going to go out on site for the most part and analyze the site. They're relying upon the data to make decisions. And if the data is incomplete or doesn't stand up to their scrutiny, they just push back. And that's the right they have under agreement. So the whole idea behind Encircle was you could capture with photos, videos, notes, sketches, and reports, easy single-click report as you're still on site. That information can be conveyed to all of the constituents, whether it's a reviewer or an adjuster, or even the claim admin at the office. So the data is really important, and you'll hear us talk more and more about data is gold. So they often talk about, reporting in order to get paid. Restorers primarily have to think about data to drive efficiency in their own organization because insurance companies don't want to pay for inefficiency anymore. So it's a complete field documentation tool. And the first step that a restoration contractor should do with that data is say, do I have the right people on the right jobs operating in the right manner to drive profitability? And then second, yes, I have everything I need to get paid. Let's generate our invoice and let's move on to the next job.
So you have your own contract documents within the app, or if a restoration contractor has their own, let's say they bought the Ed Cross documents or something like that, you can put either one into the app?
That's correct. And so we've got all of Ed Cross's documents in the app. He's been a big supporter in helping us ensure restoration contractors are properly covered. So whatever legal documents and forms a contractor has, and anytime they've got updates, we'll implement that for them.
So how do you update those documents into the app? Do they like send well, you tell me. I'm not sure.
They just literally send a copy of it or a copy of the update, and we program it into the app. Our whole goal is to make it easy for the field teams to use. So we don't pull up the whole document when you go to sign and fill it out. We make it really easy to use in the field. So we actually have to program these updates in, and then the output is the complete document. So there's a real science to building mobile apps for tactile-oriented people. So restoration contractors are hammer and nails, tactile-oriented individuals. They can navigate complex situations visually. But what you can't do is stick a spreadsheet in front of them, because then their eyes gloss over. And so we've designed the interface, which includes their legal documents, in a way that's easy for them to review on site, because there's so many conditions, weather, smell, lighting, that can affect your ability to comprehend data.
So how does the customer look at these documents? I mean, they have to try and read a full document on somebody's phone, or do you give them a paper copy too, or you send it to them? How does that work?
Yeah, so we've got a link feature. So number one, you can link the policyholder in just by putting the policyholder's email or phone number. They can review it. They can sign it remotely on their phone or on their computer, or they can sign it on your device. If you hand it over to them, they can do a signature on it. So the review can happen ahead of time by just forwarding the document to the policyholder. That can be done at the point of first notice of loss with the claim admin, whoever's handling the claim at the restoration contractor. Even before the project manager gets on site, they can already have access to the document to review. And then when the PM gets there, hands over his phone, or the policyholder can sign it remotely. So we give you lots of flexibility there.
Okay. Cliff, let's get one more in before halftime if you can.
Yeah, we could. This is one of the things that I hear from restoration contractors is that new technology ends up being weaponized by insurance companies and third-party administrators and public adjusters and so on and so forth against contractors. And if you could just kind of comment, I guess, on that in general, and then with your particular application in particular.
Yeah, so it's not possible to weaponize Encircle, because we're a documentation platform, which basically exposes the facts.
Okay.
And so the whole idea is creating transparency between everyone. But we're not an estimating platform, so we push data into Xactimate, and we will be pushing data into CoreLogic and T&M Pro, but we are not those systems that then have carrier rules. But we will expose carrier rules through our system to say, hey, just so you know, here's the carrier rule. We don't today, but that's in the works. So that it's guiding them as to when I'm documenting or creating a scope sheet. So we have scope sheets in our platform that align to the Xactimate code. So I can actually be building my scope based on details in the field. And what you'll eventually see is, hey, you're working for this carrier. This is their rule around this component, whether it's the 2-foot flood cut, whether it's 2 coats of paint, what have you, they'll be alerted to it. Now, they may decide to move forward and just add a note. Hey, I've decided to do this. I know this is the carrier rule, but this is what has to be done on this site.
Are the carriers trying to influence you, in any uncomfortable way?
You know what? No, we haven't had it. What the carriers really appreciate is the level of transparency, and especially with the video narration. they really appreciate the level of transparency and details. And I think I shared an actual video with you. It's the facts on site. Here's my Tramex moisture meter. Look at the reading. It's in the video. That's pretty hard to embellish or
Well, it is, unless there's someone 6 feet, 6 feet in front of you, with a spray bottle, they're spraying the wall or whatever, and
that's true.
You're gonna check that place. But no, I agree that pretty good. Joe,
and what I've always said to my team is we have to make it easier for everybody in the claim ecosystem to be honest. Make it easier to be honest than dishonest. And I believe that laziness, for lack of a better word, trumps creativeness on fraud. But
all right, let's go to halftime. We'll be back for the second half of our interview with Paul Donald, the CEO and co-founder of Encircle Inc. Our marquee sponsor is First On Site, your trusted full-service disaster recovery and property restoration company at firstonsite.com. Association sponsors are ACGIH, Advancing Careers of Professionals in Environmental Health, Industrial Hygiene, and Safety, interested in defining their science. ACGIH.org. AIHA, Healthy Workplaces, A Healthier World. AIHA.org. The Environmental Information Association, EIA's multidisciplinary membership collects, generates, and disseminates information concerning environmental and occupational health hazards in the built environment at EIA-USA.org. The IICRC, a nonprofit standards development and certifying body for the cleaning and restoration industry, IICRC.org. The Restoration Industry Association, the oldest and largest nonprofit professional trade association dedicated to providing leadership and promoting best practices through advocacy, standards, and professional qualifications for the restoration industry at restorationindustry.org. Industry sponsors are Particles Plus, feature-rich particle counters and air quality instrumentation. Count on us, particlesplus.com. TSI Inc., an industry leader in precision instrumentation for monitoring indoor air. Learn how to expand your IAQ investigations, TSI.com. Tramex Meters, developing modern dynamic moisture meters and humidity monitoring systems since 1974, tramexmeters.com. And Healthy Indoors Magazine, a free online magazine for industry professionals and consumers, healthyindoors.com. All right, we're back with the second half of our interview. We've got Paul Donald from Encircle Inc. Paul, there's a text question here I thought I'd jump on. It's saying that many contractors now have billing departments that proof the documentation before presenting it to carriers. One of the difficulties of the process is communication between, I think that's the project manager and the billing department. Do you have any suggestions on how to solve or enhance this problem?
Yeah, that is the inherent problem that Encircle set out to solve. Is you've got somebody who understands the workflow that needs to be followed because they're the ones generating the report, oftentimes a claim admin. And then you've got the PM in the field who is like, you want me to fix this job or not? You want me to spend all my time documenting? So how do you bridge that? And within Encircle, we've got customizable notes where you can, the claim admin or the admin in Encircle can set up note templates that need to be filled out in the field. But a lot of it is really training the field technicians and PMs on why it's so important that we document. And it's not that hard. You're talking about documenting cause of loss. Here's how many photos we need of the cause of loss. Here's the note type we need on the cause of loss. Here's the resulting damages. And then here's the work that needs to be progressed on. And then if you follow that up with a 2-minute video and you get them to describe the cause of loss, the resulting damages, and the work that needs to be done in a 2-minute video, you kind of enforce that workflow and reinforce it and can actually follow up because you can watch the video and see, do they understand what they're talking about? Are they assessing this job properly? So it gives you a perfect coaching opportunity. That has proven to be the best tool to get compliance between the field technicians and PMs and the claim admins.
I just want to follow up on that real quick, Cliff, and then I'll turn it over to you. I was on Facebook, one of the restoration chat room kind of things, and somebody was talking about should they use Encircle or not, and then people were going back and forth. And the thing that I was impressed by was most of the people who responded said, for this particular issue you're having, in this case it was, I don't remember exactly. Oh, it was the floor plans were a little bit off, not quite, perfect. They said, talk to their education group there, because they will walk you through it and make sure that you get it right, that whatever your issue is, they're really good at responding and getting it right for you. So how many people do you have doing that type of thing?
There's 13 people. So we have customer success managers, which there's 6 of, and then the rest are in our support organization. You will always find somebody to pick up a phone at Encircle. We the way we looked at it was restorers are expected to go out no matter what and interact with the policyholder. We need to be there for them. Like they're emergency first responders that aren't going to want to just talk to a chatbot or email. So while we do have a chatbot on our website, you can call us and we're there to assist. And then of course we've got our Encircle U that all of our customers could take advantage of to do free training. And some of our trainings come with IAC credits, which is an added bonus.
Interesting. Cliff?
Significant effort. And as you said, most of the development cost was really spent on putting this water damage capability into the program. I was a fire guy before I was a water guy, and IICRC is pretty close to finishing their S700 fire damage standard. Chris, who works with your company, Chris Wisnowski, was a key player in putting that document together. And I'm just wondering whether you're going to kind of do the same thing that you did with water, with that particular standard as well. Reading the standard, seeing how you can incorporate things that would benefit contractors into the program.
We're always looking for ways to incorporate tips as to help them be compliant with the standards, but also use the standards to increase the knowledge of their staff. So you can't train everybody because of the high turnover, but if we can in the app push people to do things that are compliant with the standards, or at least give them triggers to do it the right way, we think that's the benefit, and they'll learn the right way versus developing bad habits. So that's what we're always looking at, is how do we encourage the right habits in the field versus the bad habits. And then of course we're big on training, so Chris goes out and does a ton of training. We create training videos, quick tip videos. So yeah, Chris is close to the S500, the S700, the standards committees, and we love him for it. And I think the industry loves all of the content that Chris puts out.
Joe?
Oh, I've got a text here that asks, what are some of the best videos on your site? I don't know if John maybe could pull up the site while we're discussing that. They want to get an idea, I think, of just how the app works and what the ins and outs are. Are there good videos on your site that can tell us that?
Yeah, there are a couple. It's hard to convey everything because it's a pretty comprehensive platform. So you can look through the features on our website for sure, under the platform, or even if you just scroll down on the main page there's going to be, it's a long page. So if you keep going down, there's all of your details if you want to click into them.
Okay. You went past them, John. Here we go.
Or just up one too. You've got some others. So that's the floor plan one.
Well,
so
that's the one that really gets my interest, Paul. What other industries, if any, are you looking to focus on next? I could see the construction industry maybe using some of this to assist with, especially those that are dealing with insurance repair. Is that a big part of what you guys do now?
Our roadmap is 5 years long, and it's still focused on the restoration contractor and adjuster. We're in Canada, US, UK, and Australia. And I actually think we've got customers in probably 40 different countries that we tell them we don't support those countries, so you're on your own. But we've got customers all over the world because this is a universal problem that we're solving. It's not unique to North America by any standard. So making it easy to comply with the insurance company's requirements and providing that transparency, and then driving efficiency in the claim cycle, because contractors are waiting way too long to get paid. But it all comes down to documentation. There's so many problems to solve here that, I'd like to be able to move into other industries. This is the one we're 100% focused on.
Gotcha. I'm wondering too, like there are companies out there that focus on assisting restoration contractors with just their billing, let's say. Are you kind of, will they need those companies anymore if they're using Encircle?
Yeah, so we're a field documentation platform that feeds into job management and those other systems. So think of it as we're the front end that ensures you get paid, because without documentation, so the old adage is, if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. So we want to make sure that it gets documented, but documented in a way that stands up in a court of law, that validates your estimate, your invoice, and all of the other processes moving it forward, helping drive efficiency, and helps you manage your own business, because most of your costs are in the field. Are you operating efficiently in the field? Are your people trained to the right levels? And even when it comes down to our environmental, insurance companies want to see restoration contractors putting less waste in the landfills. How do you document that? These are all things that Encircle is going to help restoration contractors do to be compliant and truly serve the insurance industry, which isn't going away. Property claims they're going to continue to increase as our population does.
Cliff, do you want to do one more before we go to the roundup? I think it's good to get to the roundup pretty early today.
No problem. What I'd like to do is ask really how it would be. There are certain companies that are just contents only. They just restore contents. And how would they be utilizing this?
I think we're one of the most, if not the most popular contents platform for documenting. So for the pack-out process, I don't think you can beat Encircle simply for the speed and ease of use, because that's literally what we were designed to do right from the beginning, is to have an uneducated policyholder do it. So we really focused on that ease of use and fast workflow, and then instantly be able to generate a non-restorable, restorable list, and then upload that into Exact or other estimating systems.
So they would take a picture of every item in terms of when they pack it out and put in the information. What about when they get to the plan and they begin to actually process these things? Do they still utilize the system at that particular point, or not so much? To document the restoration.
Many do, because many leverage that Encircle for even when they get to the plan, because you can move content between boxes, you can move it into storage units, lockers, store on site. All of that can be tracked. But if you're looking for really tracking it through the whole cleaning process, there are other platforms that do that and do it quite competently. So this is, and now you're starting to get into how complex this industry is, and where do you draw the line and then integrate. I'm a big believer in integration. A lot of contractors view the cost of these systems as a cost. I tend to view it as an investment. If you look at even Encircle, we're 100 people strong, but we spend $1.4 million on systems, and we do that because there's a huge return on investment that allows us to scale when we have the right systems that are integrated. It's just the day and age we live in. And if we don't have systems to be able to manage the data flow and manage our operations, you won't be able to leverage AI. And AI is going to rock everybody's world. That genie is not going back in the bottle. And insurance companies are, as I said, the largest buyers of data. They're a financial institution. They're driven off of data. They will be leveraging AI as they are now, even more so at every level of their organization. So the first imperative is that you've got accurate, defensible data. The next step is that you've got systems that allow you to leverage AI to drive efficiency as well before it moves to the carrier.
Paul, before we go to the roundup, I wonder if you could quickly give us an idea of how this is priced for. You've got a wide range of restoration contractors. Some, one truck guys. You got multi-city, multi-facility groups. You've got people like Cliff said that just do contents. You've got people. How do you handle the pricing of the app for different groups?
Yeah, we price it on a per job basis, but it's factored on a per job, but on a subscription basis. But think about it in terms of it's an all-in price. You get everything for one price, and it factors in on how many jobs you do a year. So we can work with the smallest of contractors to the largest. It scales because it's based on jobs, right? So it's not that you do 30 million a year. It doesn't matter how many jobs you do. It scales in both quadrants on price and usage.
Now, when you say jobs, the number of jobs or the price of the jobs?
No, number of jobs. So we don't care what the price of the size of the job is, because what we found with restoration contractors is it all evens out over the year. And so what they just need to know is, hey, I've got N number of jobs that came in. I got a high capacity event. I can't worry about what's it going to cost to add this person. What's it going to cost to do this job? We just keep it drop dead simple and highly cost effective.
Very good. John, let's go to the roundup. And our thanks to Tramex Meters for being our sponsor of the roundup. Why don't we bring in Chris Rosnowski first, John, and then we'll get to the Restoration Global Watchdog, Pete Consigli. But Chris, if you're on there, I'm curious, is there anything you'd add on to, that you'd like to jump in and add on to, or maybe further explain for our audience?
Yeah, you know what? Paul does a great job of selling Encircle. Unfortunately, I'm out of focus here, and he really pushed the thought when you're in fire and flood, and you're in contents, and you're in water damage. You've got so much going on and so many different jobs that are coming into the business that when you start to focus on that field documentation, getting the reports out quickly, getting communication with the adjusters in place, all of that speed and transparency results in getting those checks faster. We've proven it time after time.
I'm assuming you're the guy, Paul's the guy that came from the tech world, and you must be the guy that came from the real, I shouldn't say the real world, but let's say it, the real world out there, pulling that nasty wet carpet out and all that stuff. What's your background, Chris?
Yeah, my background, so, RIA trainer, worked in management with a bunch of great companies, and as large as 45 million a year in a single branch down to running my own shop. So yeah, it's lots of field time, lots of time managing teams. And then the last 10, 12 years have been training and consulting.
You've even got the look of the field guy. I mean, the broad shoulders to carry stuff out with you. But let's get the restoration industry global watchdog, Pete Consigli. Pete.
Well, good job, Paul. The one thing, the integration process is really slow, isn't it? I know that you got a lot going on with CoreLogic and Verisic Exactware, and other programs. So a couple things I'd like you to talk about. Besides the two matching 800-pound gorillas, which is probably CoreLogic and Versic. And obviously there are others. Who else are you working with, or who else is on your radar? I don't really want you don't need to expound on, even though we pride ourselves as being a hard-hitting 60-minute show, we don't like to throw our guests under the bus. So I'm not going to say, well, who are the guys who really don't want to play well in the sandbox of everybody else? But, talk about just what's going on in that regard. How can the industry work closer together? What do you think the chances are that it will, so that for the greater good, we can raise all the ships in the harbor? That's one thing. And then the other thing specifically, as you see, I got this moisture map, where are things at, and what kind of timeline do you think with all the remote monitoring? The remote monitoring stuff now is kind of the new kid on the block, which has now gone beyond the moisture mapping and a lot of those early stage programs, which were often very tedious. But it's kind of tiptoeing its way through to figure out how is it going to integrate with everything else. So those are the two big things, I guess, in some context, I'd like you to address, however you feel comfortable.
Yeah, and going back, this is a complex industry that requires multiple systems. Integration is absolutely critical. You've got the large incumbents that you mentioned, and nice thing is, we fought against them for first 8 years of Encircle, or fought to get our market share. Didn't fight against them, but fought to get our market share. And I think now field documentation has become known and something that people need to do, and that's kind of pushed the 800-pound gorillas to say, hey, we need to integrate, we need this data. We can't continue to have insufficient data if our platform is going to be valuable. And you're starting to see that across the industry, is that integration needs to happen because we all need to have data, and none of that, the whole data set does not sit in any one platform. And so there's this co-opetition idea, and I'm really excited for where it's going, because we have to be customer focused, not internally focused with our closed walls, but customer focused to make sure that we're getting the data and compiling it in a way that's delivering value to all the constituents. So the ability to utilize AI to make the restorer's business better, to make the independent adjusting firm better, to make the insurance company better. We can accomplish that without having any biases if we integrate across these platforms and do it right. So that's number one. That's happening. I'm super excited. And this industry should continue to push for it, because you're the customer, you pay for it, demand it from your vendors. When you get into remote monitoring, I think that's a really exciting space, simply because documenting water losses is tough. It's, individuals on site are moving heavy equipment. They're dealing with inclement situations. To have to document it is a painful exercise. If you can automatically pull it off of the equipment or off of sensors, that's a big deal. That's a time savings, increases accuracy, and reduces human error, which we do see in water documentation. So I see that taking off. The problem is there's an expense to the restorer. They have to invest in it. So I think there's going to be some time, but I think that time is good for all of the vendors like Encircle, like Dry-Ease, like Phoenix and others, to really find out where the world-class capabilities are within that, and how we truly serve the restorer with remote monitoring. Because it's not just, again, one system. It's multiple systems that have to talk to each other to really deliver the value to the restorer, and then make it price competitive. Make sure that it's something that they can make the investment in their business and get a 10x financial return on, which is kind of the standard.
So the thing that I want to follow up on that is that when you were talking to this part of the interview, you kind of casually mentioned indoor air quality, maybe because the name of the show is IAQ Radio. But the fact of the matter is that the overlap between restoration, remediation guys, drying guys, reconstruction guys, and the whole indoor air quality space, it overlaps a lot. Yeah. And so it's my belief, you haven't really talked about what kind of service Encircle may be able to provide in the indoor air quality space. Certainly listeners of our show, we have a pretty good mix between restoration and indoor air quality. But in regard to the remote monitoring, one of the areas where I see that it could be going is once you can capture data or information in the drying sector, there's no reason why you couldn't get it, in my opinion, in the indoor air quality sector. It's just different particles, different tracking methods, all of that. And these mold assessors and indoor air quality guys have been doing that through a variety of diagnostic tools for quite a while. So where do you see that somehow becoming part of Encircle's mission, if you would, and the bigger, larger industry mission of total integration, where the indoor air quality sector, the restoration sector, they kind of start to come closer together because they overlap so much, and they impact the insurance industry, the property managers, the government, all the people that are dealing with disasters. They're not as separated as they were years ago. They're on each sector's radar. Let's put it that way. So talk about that a little, Paul. If you got some comments and something you could share with the audience on that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right that they share a lot in common. And with our hydro platform, there's no reason why we can't service the mold assessors, the indoor air quality, because they're taking readings. So you're capturing readings. A lot of times it's due to a wet or flooded environment, but there's no reason why hydro couldn't be expanded. And actually, we're looking at that, and something that Chris has been on me for probably a couple of years on now. But you've got to pick your battles, which was the restoration contractor. But the goal is to expand hydro to include those other readings.
That's good to know. I mean, like from Cliff and my perspective, we're glad you're focusing in on the restoration stuff first, because that's who we are. But heck, Cliff, Joe, me, we're inducted into the IAQ Hall of Fame, and me and Cliff, I think we're the only two people in the industry that are honorary members of RAAN. That so we feel very honored, and we take a lot of pride in that those industries have recognized us for the work that we've done. But I think the indoor air quality stuff is next. So I think Chris is right, but Cliff, him and a lot of his fellow instructor friends, they're like pit bulls with dogs with the bone in their mouth. And once they get that bone in there, they're not going to let go. And, the thing that I always say, Paul, and, maybe I think you're probably going to agree with this. We only have so much bandwidth. We only have so much money. We only have so much resources. We only have so many things that we can do. And you have to basically the main thing first, and then kind of there's a pecking order in life. And I think you got the pecking order right at Encircle for whatever that's worth.
Thanks. Now, the indoor air quality group still needs to document. And video documentation is a perfect way to explain. So while I say hydro doesn't track, sort of the mold readings, but or the mold tests, certainly you can document it in photos, videos, notes, and other details, and instantly generate reports, which could save a lot of time.
Yeah, Pete, you're actually looking at some. I think it's a really interesting time that's coming up. You've got a bunch of stuff that's in the different companies that are building those moisture sensors. You're getting things built on board on the equipment themselves. Phoenix, Dry's are building stuff right into the equipment. You'll have capabilities of turning equipment off and settings up within those units so that they can be programmed differently than maybe they're being used now. Like you look at the next 3 to 5 years, as these technologies emerge, there's going to be a real difference in how we document the jobs in the field, but also how you control the jobs, how you set them up. You can set venting up on a parameter. So if a temperature hits, well, now you have sensors on site that when the temperature hits, you can purge your system, and that's different. That's unique, but now it's becoming where the technology is in your hand. And I think that's the difference from some of the older systems that had some of those capabilities. You had to log into computers. Now you're going to be able to do it from almost anywhere.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point, Chris. The whole idea of doing logging, that's been around for years in the industry. We used to, years ago, before the mainstream suppliers had it, we used to get the data loggers from Granger and places like that. We'd put them on sites in these big commercial jobs, and they had little sketchy screens and discs that we do. Well, that's all archaic now, just like fax machines and things of that nature. But everything is going cloud-based. And like I said, once the moisture and the water, which is the most ubiquitous of, the claims that are going to hit the insurance adjuster and the contractor's desk, this indoor air quality, because these guys have been tracking this stuff and writing reports and doing all those kinds of things for years. And I think they're gonna be right on this. So that's in my mind, is a big open pathway for Encircle and other suppliers of the industry to kind of go down. Paul, I got one final question for you, and maybe Chris may or may not comment on that, and then I'll turn it back over to the boys. So when you talked about the T&M suite, that's the program that now is under Versic, correct?
So Verisk is coming up with time and material. You've got Sedgwick with T&M Flow, I believe they're creating. So we're not integrated there yet. They haven't launched it, but the plan is to integrate with that when that goes live. So yeah.
I guess my question is that a competitor to was it Versic or Sedgwick? Which one bought the Greg Dillon that program? Because he had that for a long time.
That was Sedgwick. Sedgwick bought T&M Pro.
So what's happening in Versic now, which bought Exactware, they're coming out with a comparable product in the T&M space. Is that?
Yeah, and our goal is to be able to work with either.
Yeah, well, no, that part I understand, because you guys are as close to Switzerland as you can get. No, the reason I bring that up is I believe that anyone who knows me for a while know I've been a T&M advocate for years, and I think that the industry software and estimating programs has been very weak, in my opinion, generally speaking, in capturing T&M stuff and capturing for a long time contents. They've kind of caught up with the contents area now. They really lagged in that. Initially it was just all construction related. And then all the restoration stuff came in, and that's expanding now. And of course, now they have to deal with the remote monitoring and all the new things that are coming along. But the T&M, I think, is big because that's been the mainstay on a lot of these commercial projects and the CAT zone projects for years. And it was difficult, and it was clumsy, and it was cumbersome, if you would, if you didn't have a good program. The T&M stuff that Greg put out, the original guys that did that going way back in the day. There were companies like Munters and the big large companies before the industry consolidated, but they were proprietary programs. But Allstate way back in the day had property estimating system, and State Farm had CompuClaim. This is before Exactware ever came along, and they were proprietary programs. But the contractors have been around that long, used to work with them. And then in the 90s, I had some T&M stuff that I advocated for when I was partnering with Dry's for many years, and that was all back when we were using floppy disk. But, that's the progression of where it's went. But the one thing I'll say is the general principles for estimating, billing, general cost, and markups, that hasn't changed. Those principles are around forever. They'll be around long after we're gone. And the big thing is the industry, they need to be educated in that. I think as smart as a lot of guys are today and as savvy as they are, I don't think they have an understanding of it, Paul. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you and Chris can comment as we wrap up this show today. But it seems to me that just saying, well, we're going to do what this program says or that program, look, take a door. If you want to have a front door installed in a house, maybe it's $2,000. Okay. Supply and install front door to the house, $2,000. You could also go to a program like Exactware somewhere else, and you can have, 25 to 35 line items and break out every little part that enters that. But the point is, if you don't understand the general principles of how to scope and evaluate and put a reasonable price together that's competitive in the market, and explain it to the customers, insurance companies, the homeowners, whoever else is paying, I think you're going to be doomed. And I think this is the area that Encircle helps the restoration contractors, and I think you're onto a good thing there. So, any final comments that you or Chris have, and then we'll turn it back to the boys.
Yeah, I think this is where AI is going to help. If you document cause of loss, resulting damages, and work that needs to be done, we can leverage AI, which we're already working on, that can break that out, the scope that can be applied to whether you're doing T&M, whether you're doing line item estimating. Let's extrapolate the complexity of the actual estimating tool, and let's focus on making sure the scope is accurate and complete. And then there should be a way to automate it, whatever tool you're using, with a final human review for any anomalies. And that should be less than 20% of the overall flow. So I think that world's going to get a lot more interesting and be in the favor of the restoration contractor, with one caveat: if they fully document the loss so that an accurate and detailed scope can be created, then we're going to simplify the estimating side. So you won't see, I believe once we get there, you won't see major delays for estimating on the mitigation side, or sorry, invoicing on the mitigation side.
That's good to know. Chris, you got any final comments? Chris wrote a great paper for his WS paper comparing unit cost to time and material. I was the primary reviewer on it. It was published in CNR. He presented it in Australia, and he's done a great job on that. And Chris, all I could do is, from the Global Watchdog, you got a big attaboy for me on that. So why don't you weigh in a couple deals, and then we'll turn it to the boys for final comments, and we'll wrap up a great show.
Yeah, you know what? So rate material has a big opportunity here. Cliff mentioned earlier the weaponization of information, which goes both ways, right? Restorers can weaponize information, and same with the carriers. But when you start to look at rate material and using that terminology, and then using the supporting evidence that you could pick up in nearly real time, all of a sudden you go from this paper system that is supporting what you did, but not necessarily a direct reflection with an audit capability, to having digital tools that are picking up the time that it was actually entered, when people were on site, all the different things that you can embed within a digital system that provides that transparency and removes the ability to weaponize one way or another. I think that transparency, at least in this case, is an advantage to the restorer, because so many things happen on a job site where those inefficiencies are built in, and sometimes it looks like the job really got out of hand, when the reality is that you have a scope of work that requires the time to actually execute in the field. And you guys know how it is when you start to actually work on jobs, sometimes you run into those really tough jobs to clean, and the time just adds up. Well, at least everyone's now able to see how that time started to compound, and how those costs are reflecting out in more of a real-time situation. I think that's, again, the next 2 to 3 years is going to be pretty exciting in this space.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, well, good job, boys.
Cliff, before we go, do you have any final questions or thoughts?
No, I don't. I'm good.
Guys, that was great. I appreciate both of you for joining us. This is Radio Joe. But you know what? Before we go, I always like to give you the last word. Is there anything, Paul, we missed that you'd like to add?
Oh, I'd like to thank both you and Cliff for having us on the show. I appreciate the opportunity. And you know what? Restoration contractors, indoor air quality, having a healthy, vibrant community is dependent upon them. So we're here to support them, and it's an exciting environment, and we appreciate your support.
Thank you for joining us. And Chris, same question. Anything you'd like to add?
No, just thanks for having us, guys. Really appreciate it.
Always great to have the field guys in here too, We got to keep together, Chris. Anyway, this is Radio Joe Hughes saying thanks to this week's guests, Paul Donald at Encircle, and also Chris Rosnowski for joining us, my co-host, the Z-Man, Cliff Zlotnick, of course, Pete, the restoration industry's global watchdog, Pete Consigli. John, you got to have faith at the controls. Most importantly, our loyal audience and our sponsors. We'll be back next Friday at noon. We've got, I think we're going to have J. David Miller on next week. A real a treat to have him join us one more time here for the next episode of IAQ Radio Plus.
For IAQ Radio, I'm Spike Reel saying thanks for listening.